Morning Sun Forest. There is a fairytale forest called the Morning Sun Forest. It is always daylight there, such is the divine magic. Darkness is forbidden to enter these places, and sunlight reigns there fully. Fairytale animals live there, and even more fabulous elven people look after them. But the Morning Sun Forest has one drawback. There are no cats there. Absolutely none. Neither domestic nor wild forest ones. For some reason, these little fluffy creatures have always avoided the magical groves. It was early morning, which in the Morning Sun Forest was distinguished by its special freshness and pleasant spring coolness. A young elven girl named Luniel was walking through familiar groves and glades, not knowing any worries. She was carrying a basket with her and was picking berries. Luniel was humming a song and listening to the birds singing in response. But then, she was attracted by some strange animal voice coming from the right. The girl stopped and listened to the voice. And the voice was heard again. It was not like any animal that the elf had heard before. It was calling her, as if someone there was in trouble, and asking for help. But who could it be? Luniel left the basket and went there, to meet the animal calling her. She came out to the next clearing, where a tall, spreading tree grew, a willow. And on one of the lower branches of the willow sat a strange fluffy creature. In size, a small fox. But with soft and fluffy fur, a short round muzzle and pointed ears. The animal also had a long, straight tail, striped in color. "Who are you?" Luniel spread her hands in bewilderment. "Can't you get down?" She realized, looking at the kitten. And it was the kitten that had actually climbed the tree and couldn't get back down. It stood there, wagging its tail, and looked down at the elven girl with hope. Luniel came up to it and held out her hands to it, urging it to jump. The kitten was still afraid. So the girl had to climb up the branch herself, and holding on with one hand, she took the fluffy little animal down with the other. She touched the cat, and sparks seemed to run through her fingers. It was as if she had been electrocuted. Static electricity tore off the fur and pierced her fingers. That's what Luniel thought. In fact, things were different. The mysterious and ancient magic of the forest had not been driving cats away for nothing, all these centuries. Here, under the canopy of the forest of the morning sun, strange things happened to the cats. Luniel sat down on the grass and tried to play with the kitten, stroking and turning him over, in every way. But again some kind of electric flash slipped between them. The elf shook her head, and felt that her head was spinning. But at the same time, a pleasant warmth spread through her hand, and this dizziness seemed pleasantly intoxicating. She stroked the cat again, and found that the strange effect was only getting stronger. Some kind of magical interaction was taking place between her hands and the cat's fur, echoing in Luniel's head with a pleasant warmth, ringing, and light drowsiness. As a result, having played like this for a couple more minutes, she became exhausted, and finally fell asleep, struck by a strange spell. And the kitten also fell asleep, on her lap, for some time. When Luniel opened her eyes, she did not immediately notice what had happened. There was no animal next to her, but the world around her had somehow changed. More precisely, her view of this world had changed. Everything seemed to have become larger. The trees were taller. The grass obscured everything before her eyes. And even stranger were her own feelings in her body. For some reason, her whole body did not obey, as if it were someone else's, and in general, she did not recognize herself. A cat's tail flashed before her eyes, but now it was growing not on the kitten, but on herself. She realized that she was wagging her tail in front of her nose, of her own free will, and she felt this tail as a part of herself. She saw that she herself was overgrown with fur, black and white and spotted. And that now instead of arms and legs she had 4 cat paws. She herself turned into a cat, playing with the kitten. Or maybe they swapped bodies. This thought came to her mind quite logically, because she saw an elf, exactly the same as her own reflection in the forest lake had been all her life. The elf girl Luniel was sitting at the other end of the clearing, stupidly twirling her hands, as if not knowing what to do with them. Then she lifted her leg and tried to scratch her ear with her leg, but of course she couldn't reach it. In general, she behaved like a cat. She fell on her side and began to stretch. And the real Luniel in the cat's body stared at this with wild green eyes, and did not understand anything. What happened? She tried to say, but in the end only a cat's meow burst out. Meow, the elf next to her meowed herself, as if she did not know other words. And she really did not know them, because this was not an elf at all, but a small kitten in an elf's body. The magic of the forest affected the couple who met in a strange way, and swapped their souls. Luniel kitten rose on 2 hind legs, habitually trying to get up, but could not stand, and fell on all 4s. She repeated her attempt to stand up straight a few more times, but was unsuccessful, and decided to go on all 4s. Meow escaped from the cat's mouth when the kitten approached the girl. Meow, the girl answered, as if she understood the meaning of what was said, and answered in cat language. To their great surprise, they both really understood each other, and began to communicate with each other using the ancient cat dialect. And this is how the conversation turned out. Hey, you. You too, hey. I mean, hello. Hello, furry monster. What are you doing in my body, and why am I in yours? How should I know? Your body, by the way, is completely inconvenient. And you don't have a tail. How do you live without a tail? And how do you live with a tail? Why is it always wagging? How can you walk on 4 legs instead of 2? Very easy. Not only walking, but also running and jumping are very convenient. Try jumping. Come here, let me help you. Don't touch me with my hands. Yes, mine. These are my hands, even if you control them now. And be careful, don't grab them like that. The elf grabbed the kitten and began to twirl and twist it herself. Static electricity appeared between them again, and in a couple of minutes everything repeated itself in reverse. There were more discharges, both fell asleep for a while, and they again swapped bodies. Well, finally, everything has returned to normal. I am me again. Luniel woke up again and looked at the cat. Well, what do you say, fluffy monster? I'll say that I am also pleased to return to my body. The tail is in place. And you take your pointy ears. They do not know how to twirl at all. Why would elven ears spin? I can hear everything just fine. Look how I can jump, on 4 legs. And you can't do that, I'm sure you can't. I can jump on 2, and even with a skipping rope, my 2 are no worse than your 4. In short, they began to argue among themselves about who was more agile and whose body was better. And most importantly, they still understood each other perfectly. They understood the cat language. The forest magic left them this effect forever, as a gift. And they discovered that they could switch bodies again if Luniel began to stroke the cat hard and often. Then she would again transform into a kitten, and the kitten would be placed in a human body. So they began to have fun, for fun, and switched 3 times again, showing each other different tricks while in someone else's body. Okay, let's do this. Let's go to my settlement, and I'll introduce you to everyone there. What should I call you? What kind of animal are you, and what is your proper name? My name is Laska, that's my name. And I'm called a cat. I'm an animal of the feline breed. Don't you have any of those in your forest? No, we don't, you're the first one. Well, are you coming to visit us? I'll go. Will you feed me there? Do you have any milk? There is deer milk, if you ask. It is very tasty, and fresh, we only milked it this morning. And so they did. Laska went to the elven settlement, and Luniel gave her some deer milk to drink, and began to show it to her friends and comrades. They were very surprised, and most importantly, they tried to pet the animal themselves. They listened to the girl's story about how she changed bodies, but for some reason no one else was able to repeat it. The magic of the forest could only change places with a kitten. They demonstrated this, although they did not make a particularly strong impression. And it is true. From the outside, it is not noticeable that they have changed. Here is a kitten, which no one has seen before, who makes some awkward movements. And here is an elven girl, who for some reason begins to meow, and makes even more awkward movements. And what is the point of admiring this? The day ended, and for now they decided to remain in their own bodies. And since Laska was a traveling cat, and did not have a permanent home, it was decided to leave her at Luniel's house, at least for the time being. So they agreed. Going to bed that night, Luniel thought about how she could use her new skill, to transform into a cat. And this is what she managed to come up with. The fact is that around the forest there were other fairy lands. But other, fairy peoples lived in them. Dwarfs in the mountains, mermaids in the rivers, and people in the cities, which elves, for example, considered also a fairy tale, and not a simple people. Elves and people, and dwarfs, and mermaids, they, in general, got along with each other. But they did not try to closely intertwine their lives and cultures, but kept apart. They exchanged various goods. One is more in the city, another is more in the forests, the third is mined in the depths of the mountains, underground. And cats, for example, are a novelty in the forest of the morning sun, but in human cities they are the norm. And many secrets are kept by people from elves, and elves from people. And they try to get these secrets from each other. And Luniel decided that she would go to the human city to get a couple of human secrets for her people. But she would do it not in the body of an elf girl, but in the body of a fluffy cat Laska. So that no one would suspect anything. So she started practicing body swapping every day, and trained to be an ordinary cat. And it turned out to be not so easy. At first, it was very unusual for her to move on all fours. Then, when she had already gotten used to it, she began to learn long cat jumps. And practiced the cat dialect. Although, this came naturally to her. Rather, she practiced the ability to talk about cats, and not about elven, and especially not about human. Although, she thought that it would be useful to ask other cats about human things, in cat language. But Laska quickly explained to her that cats are not very interested in people, and need them only as a source of easy food, and housekeepers. After 2 weeks, Luniel practiced being a cat so much that it was impossible to distinguish her from the most ordinary cat. And Laska, in turn, practiced walking in an elven body so that it was impossible to distinguish her from an ordinary elf. Unless she opened her mouth. For some reason, although Luniel meowed beautifully like a cat, Laska could not learn to speak elven, and therefore in the body of her new friend she preferred to remain silent so that no one would recognize her by this meowing. And after a few more days, Luniel finally got ready for the road, and went in a cat body to obtain human secrets, to the nearest human town. And this is what came of it.